let's talk about managing covered calls. We'll assume that your position is already open, and now you want to evaluate your options. We'll start off by reviewing the 3 ways all covered call trades exit. First, the stock will close at an expiration at or below the strike price of your short call, and it expire worthless. This is a pretty clean exit where you keep both the stock and the call premium. Second, the stock can close above the strike price at expiration, resulting in an assignment that calls your stock away. You keep the proceeds of the stock sale at the strike price, plus the call premium received. Note that this could potentially happen earlier if the call is exercised earlier, such as immediately prior to a dividend. The final option for exiting the trade is if you decide to buy the short call to close the position. Further, you may decide to sell the stock itself. In that case, your return will be the combination of your return on the stock and on the option. Now let's think about some of the common mindsets investors have relative to the stock. First, you may be someone who actually wants to own the stock because you're bullish and want to benefit from its appreciation. Second, you might be in a position where you simply don't want to sell the stock. This could be because you're up tenfold over the past decade and don't want to incur a massive tax bill. Finally, you might not care about owning the stock at all, so getting it called away doesn't really matter to you. So with those exit options and mindsets in place, let's talk about some common management scenarios. The first is the easiest, closing the position. Since you sold to open the call, you can simply choose to buy to close the same call in order to unwind your position. Once the option is off your books, you're no longer liable for it in any way. You can optionally sell the stock as well, or possibly do both within the same order. There are a lot of reasons for simply closing the position, such as hitting a predefined profit target, or maybe you've changed your mind about the underlying and just want to get rid of it. Or maybe you've decided that you don't want to risk having the shares called away under any circumstance and are buying back the call to get rid of that potential outcome. Whatever your reasoning is, closing the position is always an option. Another common scenario involves what we call rolling the calls. You will roll a call by buying back your short call while simultaneously selling a new call, which could be at any strike or term. This is often done as a reaction to underlying or volatility movement in order to maintain a given strategy around moneyness or delta or whatever. However, you might also want to roll a call just to avoid having your shares at risk of getting called away. When rolling, you can change the term and or the strike. When you keep the same term but replace it with a higher strike, that's called rolling up. Let's take a look at an example of an existing covered call we'll assume we opened a few weeks ago. We were bullish on the stock and wanted to hold the shares, so we sold an out-of-the-money call against them. However, the stock has since surged, and now the call is deep in the money. We're still bullish, but have little left to gain from more upward movement. So we want to roll the call upward to give the stock more room to grow and avoid assignment. We've already lost out on some of the upward movement, but if we roll the call up, we can capitalize on continued movement upward. So we will buy back the 32 call and replace it by selling the 37 call from the same series. This will actually cost us $225 since the call we're buying is worth more than the call we're selling. However, this is a necessary cost if we're convinced of the potential. We can now see how this roll would affect our position relative to our current book and decide whether we want to pull the trigger on the roll itself. The big risk is that if the stock drops back down, we will have booked our loss on the original call and not necessarily made up for it with the stock change. Fortunately, that's clearly visible here, so we know what we're getting into. Just like we can roll up, we also have the option of rolling down by replacing the call with one at a lower strike. Since it's the opposite of rolling up, you can assume you'd generally do it in the opposite situation. Now we'll start off with a covered call that is well out of the money. However, let's assume this is a different scenario than before. In this case, we sold the call at the money, and there has since been a big drop in the stock. The call we sold has lost most of its value at this point, and we have the opportunity to roll it down so that we're still short a call at the money. This will enable us to book the gain on the original call while rolling down to a call with higher theta and more downside protection for the underlying stock. We'd have less to gain if the stock recovered, but again, this is a risk management decision we might prefer to make. The last direction we'll talk about is rolling out. This is when you replace your short call with one at a longer duration. This is usually done when you've hit a profit target or have some other reason to prefer a longer dated option. And yes, you could also roll into a shorter term, but that's less common. If you roll out while also changing strikes, it's called a diagonal roll. This is common for when you're rolling out and trying to hit a target delta or moneyness, or a scenario similar to what we covered earlier. Let's return to our at-the-money covered call. Maybe we've decided that we've taken most of the profit from this call and want to roll it out so that there's a better balance of risk and time decay. We can simply roll it out to the same strike a month later and see how it impacts our expected P&L. Note that since the pending book still has options with time remaining, it has a value curve and not a clear-cut expiration payout on the target date. If we pull the modeling date in by a week, we can see how both books would compare over time, given that they both have time remaining to expiration. We can also continue to experiment with other dates to make sure we prefer the way the new book should play out relative to our current holdings. There are a lot of sophisticated strategies that include covered calls, but we're just going to talk about one of them right now. This one involves pairing covered call trades with cash secured put trades. A secured put is pretty simple. You sell a put, which commits you to the liability of potentially buying shares at that strike price if assigned. To secure that liability, you put up enough cash to cover the purchase outright. It's almost the same thing as a covered call since you're putting up the same investment basis and have almost identical returns. Here's an example of a covered call trade struck at $99.50. And here's a secured put for the same stock and same term struck at $99.50. Given the role of put-call parity in option pricing, these are virtually identical trades. The way this strategy works is simple. You start off by selling a put. Some people advocate selling puts out of the money so that you're less likely to get assigned, while others advocate selling it in the money so that you'll benefit from a rise in the underlying stock. Still others advocate selling the put at the money to maximize your theta. And yet there's others who will try to sell it at a price that they expect the underlying to trade at near expiration to optimize for their own systems. Regardless of the approach you take, the premise is that if your put expires worthless, you simply sell another until you get it assigned at expiration. At this point, you own the stock and sell a covered call against it. Like when selling the put, you'll need to pick a strike to sell your call at, and it'll vary based on your goals. If it expires worthless, you keep selling calls until one gets assigned and you get the stock called away. Then you start over again and repeat the process with secured puts. There are a lot of ways this strategy can play out, so there's no one-size-fits-all advice to be given. However, you should be careful when dealing with directional momentum. Selling out of the money puts will get assigned only when the stock is dropping, which results in you owning shares in the stock on the decline. At the same time, selling out of the money covered calls results in your shares getting called away while they're surging. So these are three main approaches to managing covered calls. As always, you have the option to close a position outright. However, if you want to keep the covered call on, you can also roll it to meet your goals. And finally, there are strategies out there that are agnostic to assignment and offer ways to profit from the volatility. And if you have any questions, please leave us a comment below or reach out to us at hello@quantia.com. As always, good luck and good hunting.